Welcome to our podcast where we tell stories that'll keep you up at night. And in the morning, have you asking,
What's sleep?
I'm your co-host, Timothy.
And I'm the other host, Bailey.
And let's talk about some spooky stories.
We are officially in our spooky season, and I am so hyped right now. I've decorated my door.
Spooky skeletons.
I decorated my door really spooky. I think like the last week of September, actually. I didn't even wait for October. But everybody
did it
knows.
super early.
Well, everybody knows that September is just pre-October, so...
You're right. There's nothing going on in September.
No.
I need to get some stuff, honestly. I was at Lowe's the other day grabbing these plants, and there's like just a tons of Halloween stuff, and I wanted to buy it. It was really cool. There's like this skeleton you can put on your front door, and you push
Home
a
Depot
button.
has a 16-foot skeleton.
Say 60 foot. Let's kiss under the 12-foot skeleton. 16 foot, sorry.
Gotcha.
Anyways, we actually have some very exciting news for you.
Yes.
Starting today, we're actually going to start the pre-orders for some What Sleep merch.
Woo!
We got t-shirts and whatnot. Yeah, nut.
It was aggressive.
It was very aggressive, but it warrants it. To give you a little bit more details, we're going to have 2 t-shirts, just simple colors, just to start out with. We have a little bit of a limited supply right now, but we can always order more if, the supply and demand is crazy.
Buy our shirts.
Buy our shirts. They'll be retailing for $26.99. And if you spend $50 on the store, you actually get free shipping, so you don't have to pay nothing for that.
Yeah.
And on top of that, we're actually going to be starting our Patreon, where you can directly support the podcast every month. We only got the one tier that's $5 a month. And if you do that, you'll actually get a 15% discount for the store that you can use.
Woo, sales!
Right? And it does work on top of that free shipping over $50 as well. So definitely worth it there.
Stack them.
Oh, yeah. Last bit of news that we got. We are starting a listener story submission. We're hopefully on October 31st, the big day.
Well, October 30th is actually when, I believe that's a Friday. So get your listener stories in. I want to tell them. I want to talk about you guys.
Yeah. So we're looking for any stories you have, whether they're false or real things that might have happened to you. It can be about absolutely anything. Ghosts, aliens.
Crime.
Chupacabras.
Close encounters.
Oh, yeah. Anything.
All kinds.
You can submit them at whatsleeppodcast@gmail.com. And if you're featured, you'll definitely be put into one of our episodes.
It would be super helpful, too, if you do submit, if you put into the subject line listener story.
Yes.
Because then we'll catch it right off the bat so we know what we're looking for. But I'm excited because I want to hear from you guys.
Oh, yeah. It's going to be a good time. And with that, let's get right on to this week's case.
What is it?
So we're going to be talking about the Sodder family.
The Sodder family.
The Sodder family.
Tell me about the Sodder family.
All right. So this takes place just after, World War II. We're going to start off with George Sodder. He was born with the name Giorgio Soddu in Tula, Sardinia.
I'm sorry?
Giorgio Soddu.
Giorgio.
In Tula, Sardinia, Italy in 1895.
Oh, I thought that was 4 names.
No.
I thought it was Giorgio Soddu Antonio Sardinia or something.
No. It's just a place in Italy.
Gotcha.
He immigrated to the United States 13 years after he was born with his older brother. He went back home as soon as both he and George had cleared customs at Ellis Island in New York.
Ooh.
For the rest of his life, George, as he came to be known, would not talk much about why he left his homeland.
I wonder what happened. Well, I mean, they were probably just immigrating, better life.
Yeah, well, this is around the time, when Benito Mussolini was kind of there, and you know how that went. Not exactly a fun dude to be a part of.
To be ruled under.
Essentially, yeah.
Horrifying.
Sodder eventually found work on the railroads in Pennsylvania, carrying water and other supplies to workers. So after a few years, he took more permanent work as a driver in Smithers, West Virginia. After a few more years, he started his own trucking company.
Oh, what?
Making moves, man.
Making moves. Starting a business.
Oh, yeah.
That was the time to do it, too.
Oh, yeah. I feel like that was the time when it really started to take off for a lot of, people immigrating here.
Oh, yeah.
100%. At first, he started hauling dirt to construction sites and later hauling coal that was mined in the region. So, that was profitable. Yeah. 100%. Jenny, sorry, I'm going to butcher this. Cipriani, a storekeeper's daughter, and Smithers, who had also immigrated from Italy in her childhood, became George's wife.
Aw.
Right?
Love.
It's interesting how these people managed to find each other, but I guess, around that time.
What people?
They were both from Italy. They just happened to immigrate both from Italy.
Yeah. I thought you meant serial killers.
Maybe he is. I don't know.
All right.
The couple eventually settled outside nearby Fayetteville.
Mm-hmm.
Fayetteville. I suck at names, man. Which had a large population of Italian immigrants in a 2-story timber frame house 2 miles north of town.
Okay.
So not very far from the main town of Fayetteville.
Still kind of their own little place.
Yeah, and in 1923, they had the first of their 10 children.
Jesus.
10 children. It's too many.
Again, that's how they did it, but no.
It's a lot to keep track of. George's business prospered, and they became, quote, one of the most respected middle-class families around, in the words of one local official. However, George had strong opinions about many subjects and was not shy about expressing them, sometimes alienating people. In particular, his strident opposition to Italian dictator Benito Mussolini.
Oh, dang.
Yeah.
So he was amongst people who liked him? What were his opinions?
He absolutely despised Mussolini.
Did not a lot of people despise him?
Some people were still loyal to him for whatever reason, and it led to some arguments, with other members of the immigrant community.
Right.
Because, it being like a mainly Italian immigrant kind of area.
Yeah.
So you had people on both sides, and
politics is never a good topic.
Yeah, it was just one big thing, man. The last of the Sodder children, Sylvia, was born in 1943. By then, their second oldest son, Joe, had left home to serve in the military during World War II. The following year, Mussolini was disposed of and executed by his people, dragged to the streets and hung.
That's a very violent death.
I mean, he kind of deserved worse, in my opinion, but you know. However, George's criticism of the late dictator had left some hard feelings. In October of 1945, a visiting life insurance salesman, after being rebuffed, warned George that his house would, quote, go up in smoke and your children are going to be destroyed.
Wow.
Destroyed is a very particular term to use to describe children.
Children not...
They're not going to disappear. They're not going to die. They're going to be destroyed.
I mean, I guess that gets the point across. You're an insurance salesman. You're walking up to a house. And if you really want to incite some feelings in a parent...
Well, here's the thing.
Use some strong verbiage.
He attributed all that to the dirty remarks he's been making about Mussolini.
Oh.
So now you see where it's kind of...
I see. Oh, no. Get those children out of there.
Another point, another visitor to the house was seeking work and took the occasion to go around to the back and warn George that a pair of fuse boxes would, quote, cause a fire someday.
This is a separate guy?
This is a separate guy. Just happened to come in, was just looking for work, and just pointed out to George that, his fuse boxes, that would cause a fire someday.
Red sus.
And red is sus, yes. Red is very sus. George naturally was puzzled by the observation that this random individual just came and told him.
Yeah.
Especially since he had just had the house rewired when he had an electric stove installed.
Right.
So, had to go through this whole thing. And the local electric company had said afterwards that it was perfectly safe.
Right.
So the electric company itself said it was safe. And this random guy just goes, your fuse boxes, it's going to burn your house down one day.
Did he ever go check and see if it was tampered with?
Not as far as I'm aware.
That's the first thing I would have done. Been like, all right, what'd you do to it?
Right?
I just had that fixed, man.
Literally just had it checked out. But in the weeks before Christmas that year, George's older son had also noticed a strange car parked along the main highway through town. Its occupants watching the younger Sodder children as they returned from school.
Ooh.
So it's a little creepy right there.
Yeah.
So the Sodders celebrated on Christmas Eve of 1945. Marion, the oldest daughter, had been working at a dime store, which is essentially just like a Dollar Tree back in the day, in downtown Fayetteville. And she surprised Fayetteville in downtown Fayetteville. And she surprised 3 of her younger sisters, Martha, who was 12, Jenny, who was 8, and Betty, who was 5, with new toys that she bought for them as gifts.
That's awesome.
Right?
Yeah.
The younger children were so excited that they asked their mother if they could stay up past what would have been, their usual bedtime.
Yeah.
Yeah, so cute.
That is adorable.
At 10 p.m., Jenny told them they could stay up a little later as long as the 2 oldest boys who were still awake, 14-year-old Maurice and his 9-year-old brother Luis, remembered to put the cows in and feed the chickens before going to bed themselves.
Right.
George and the 2 oldest boys, John, who was 23, and George Jr., who was 16. A lot of names to remember.
I mean, it's a lot of kids.
Yeah. They had spent the day working with their father, and they were already asleep in bed.
Yeah.
So after reminding the children of those remaining chores, she took Sylvia, who was 2 years old, upstairs with her and went to bed. At 12:30.
I don't like how specific it's getting.
It's getting very specific. At 12:30 a.m., the telephone rang, and Jenny woke and went downstairs to answer it. The caller was a woman whose voice she did not recognize, asking for a name she was not familiar with the sound of laughter and clinking glasses in the background.
Okay.
Jenny told the caller she had reached the wrong number, later recalling the woman's, quote, weird laugh. Don't know what that means. Jenny hung up and returned to bed.
Maybe it was weird because it sounded like a man portraying a woman?
See, when I think of weird laugh, I just think of Jared Leto's Joker in Suicide Squad and how awful that was. I will never forgive him for that. As she went back to bed, she noticed that the lights were still on and the curtains were not drawn. 2 things the children normally attended to when they stayed up later than their parents.
Okay.
Marion had fallen asleep on the living room couch, so Jenny assumed the other children who had stayed up later and had gone back up to the attic where they slept.
Right.
She closed the curtains, turned out the light, and returned to bed.
Okay.
At 1 a.m., Jenny was again awakened, but this time by a sound of an object hitting the house's roof with a loud bang and then rolling off the roof. Yeah.
So what was that? It was loud enough to wake her up, unless she was a light sleeper. I don't know.
It was clearly Santa.
Suspicious.
It was Santa. He fell. After hearing nothing further, she went back to sleep.
No. What?
Yeah, so...
It's been suspicious all night. Now you hear things tapping on your house or dropping on your house.
Right. But now she's like, all right, I'm going back to bed.
I mean, I'm a different person when I'm tired, so...
Fair enough.
Maybe, but I feel like I'd still be a little bit freaked out.
Oh, I would have been freaked out. Like I hear just the slightest little bang and I'm like, huh, what? I freak out and I go check around, but that's probably why I'm gonna die in horror movies. But
this week's episode's gonna put you on edge.
Oh, dude, 100%. After another half hour, she woke up again, this time smelling smoke. When she got up again, she found that the room George used for his office was on fire around the telephone line and fuse box. It
was tampered with.
Jenny woke him, and he in turn woke his older sons.
All right. It was why didn't they check? Anyway, continue.
Both parents and 4 of their children, Marion, Sylvia, John, and George Jr., escaped the house. They frantically yelled to their children upstairs, but heard no response. They could not go up there as the stairway itself was already aflame.
Oh, no.
John said it in his first police interview after the fire that he went up to the attic to alert his siblings sleeping there, though he later changed his story to say that he only called up there and did not actually see them.
Right.
Efforts to find, aid, and rescue the children were unexpectedly complicated. The phone did not work, so Marion ran to a neighbor's to call the fire department. A driver on the nearby road had also seen the flames and called from a nearby tavern. They too were unsuccessful, either because they could not reach the operator or because the phone there turned out to be broken.
And this was Christmas night?
This was Christmas Eve.
Christmas Eve.
And there was no operator on the phone.
I mean, I get it's the holidays, but your job's kind of important.
Yeah. Especially when they connected to the fire department.
Right.
Either the neighbor or the passing motorist was eventually successful in reaching the fire department from another phone in the center of town. George, who was barefoot, climbed the wall and broke open an attic window, cutting his arm in the process.
Wow.
Father of the year right here.
Right. How do you climb up a wall?
Hey, when your dad instincts kick in, anything's possible at that point.
It's like Spider-Man over here.
Right?
Sodder man.
He and his sons intended to use a ladder to the attic to rescue the other children, but it was not in its usual spot, resting against the house and could not be found anywhere nearby. A water barrel that could have been used to extinguish the fire was frozen solid.
Well, that's fair. That's not really
It is around that time,
yeah.
but just bad timing.
Really bad timing.
George then tried to pull both of the trucks he used in his business up to the house and use them to climb to the attic window. But neither of them could start despite having worked perfectly the previous day.
Wait, you've been tampered with. Check your things. If you are suspicious, why do you do nothing?
We'll get on that one.
Oh, God.
Marion ran to the neighbor's house to call the fire department, but got no response from the operator. Again, just reiterating that no one answered.
Not answering.
So the neighbor that they originally tried to call drove to town to find the fire department chief in person, even though this is the really weird part. Even though the fire department was only 2.5 miles away from the Sodder house, they didn't arrive until 8 a.m.
What time was the fire?
At 1 o'clock, so 7 hours later.
They're 2 miles?
It took them 2.5 miles, and it took them 7 hours to finally respond.
Why?
So, of course, the Sodder family was frustrated.
Yeah.
Of course, they're frustrated. The 6 Sodders who had escaped had no choice but to watch the house burn down and collapse over the next 45 minutes.
What about the other kids?
We'll get on that one. They assumed the other 5 children had perished in the blaze. The fire department, low on manpower due to the war and relying on individual firefighters to call each other, did not respond until 8 o'clock.
Wow.
Chief F.J. Morris said the next day that the already slow response was further hampered by his inability to drive the fire truck, requiring that he wait until someone who could drive was available because he had been at the tavern drinking.
So here's my problem. Yes, it is the holidays and you should be able to celebrate. However, you're A, low on manpower. B, it's already hard to get to you because apparently the operators are out of service. Why are you not glued to your phone or at the fire station? Not drinking. Yeah, C, why are you drunk on Christmas Eve when,
You're on duty as a fire department chief.
You're on duty as a chief.
Yeah.
On one of the busiest emergency holidays of the year.
Yeah, this whole thing is just one big, crazy, everything went wrong type of thing. Oh my God. The firefighters, one of whom was a brother of Jenny's, could do little but look through the ashes that were left in the Sodder's basement. By 10 a.m., Morris told the Sodders that they had not found any bones, as might have been expected if the other children had been in the house as it burned.
So then where did the bones go? What do you mean might have been expected?
Well, usually when things burn down, just, and, people burn and take...
It takes a really high heat to burn bones and bodies, especially in...
So they would have found at least something, but they found nothing.
I smell a conspiracy.
Yeah, just you wait. According to another account, they did find a few bone fragments and internal organs, but chose not to tell the family. It had also been noted by modern fire professionals that their search was cursory at best.
I bet.
So they have people, one firefighter says they found no bones. Another one's like, well, we found bone fragments and organs, but we're not going to tell them.
I don't understand.
Right.
So why?
Who knows? Nevertheless, Morris believed that the 5 children unaccounted for had died in the fire, suggesting it had been hot enough to burn their bodies completely.
No, it wasn't. So 1,100 degrees is the general highest point a house fire can get to. They can get it to up to 1,100 degrees Fahrenheit. The temperature for cremation is 1,800 degrees Fahrenheit. So
yeah, there should have been something left behind.
Bare minimum, a little bit of something.
Bare minimum.
I believe that there would have been more than just bare minimum. Anyway.
Yeah.
Facts.
So, good to know. Melting point of people is 1,800 degrees Fahrenheit. So after that whole debacle with the fire department, Morris told George to leave the site undisturbed so that the state fire marshal's office could conduct a more thorough investigation.
It's already been disturbed.
Right.
Somebody removed the bones.
Maybe. However, after 4 days, George and his wife could not bear the site anymore, so he bulldozed 5 feet of dirt over the site with the intention of converting it to a memorial garden for the lost children.
What? Wait for the investigation.
It's been 4 days, and they don't want to look at where their where they think their children died.
So investigate it. You don't cover it up. You want to know what happened to your kids. You don't bury the evidence if there is any.
Well,
I don't
they're grieving.
People.
Who knows?
I guess.
They just lost 4 children.
I guess.
Or 5 children, sorry.
I don't understand it.
The local coroner convened an inquest the next day, which held that the fire was an accident caused by, quote, faulty wiring.
The coroner?
Mm-hmm.
Boy, the whole town is conspiring against these people. You know what? I guess, yeah, since apparently
but here's the thing.
A lot of them
the electric company came out and said his wiring was totally fine. He just had the house rewired because he bought the electric stove.
So what if they just said that to put him at ease?
Maybe. There's a lot of possible theories kind of floating around about this whole thing. Among the jurors was the man who had threatened George that his house would be burned down and his children, quote, destroyed in retribution for his anti-Mussolini remarks. Death certificates for the 5 children were issued on December 30th. The local newspaper contradicted itself, stating that all the bodies had been found, but then later in the same story reporting that only part of one body was recovered. George and Jenny were too grief-stricken to attend the funeral on January 2nd, 1946, although their surviving children did.
Okay.
Not long afterward, as they began to rebuild their lives, the Sodders started to question all the official findings about the fire. They wondered why, if it had been caused by an electric problem, the family's Christmas lights had remained on throughout the fire's early stages, when the power should have gone out. Yeah. Then they found the ladder that had been missing from the side of the house on the night of the fire at the bottom of an embankment, 75 feet away.
Wow. How'd it get there?
Who knows? Clearly ghosts.
Apparently.
A telephone repairman told the Sodders that the house's phone line had not been burned through in the fire as they had initially thought, but cut by someone who had been willing and able to climb 14 feet up the pole and reach 2 feet away from it to do so.
Whoever did that moved the ladder.
A man whom neighbors had seen stealing a block and tackle from the property around the time of the fire was identified and arrested. He admitted to the theft and claimed he had been the one who cut the phone line, thinking it was a power line, but denied having anything to do with the fire.
Why would you cut a power line if you're stealing tackle and blocks?
Who knows?
Okay.
However, no record identifying the suspect exists.
What?
And why he would have wanted to cut any utility lines to the Sodder house while stealing the block and tackle has never been explained.
That's what I'm saying. Why would you cut that?
It's never been explained, and whoever they had, the record does not exist.
Expunged.
Jenny said in 1968 that if he had cut the power line, she and her husband, along with their 4 other children, would never have been able to make it out of the house. Probably because they couldn't see or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
Jenny also had trouble accepting Morris's belief that all traces of the children's bones had been burned completely in the fire.
Me too, Jenny.
Many of the household appliances had been found, still recognizable in the ash, along with fragments of the tin roof.
Right.
So clearly it wasn't that hot.
It wasn't that hot.
She contrasted the results of the fire with a newspaper account of a similar house fire that she read around the same time that killed a family of 7. Skeletal remains of all the victims were reported to have been found in that case.
Wow.
Jenny burned small piles of animal bones to see if they would be completely consumed. None ever were. An employee of a local crematorium she contacted told her that human bones remain even after bodies are burned at 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit.
Boom.
Boom.
Boom. So them children got stole.
Burn at 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit for 2 hours.
Right.
Far longer and hotter than the house fire could have been. So there should have been something of the kids left.
Yeah. Bare minimum.
The Sodders' truck's failure to start was also considered. George believed they had been tampered with, perhaps by the same man who stole the block and tackle and cut the phone line.
I don't understand how they didn't keep a record of whoever that was.
One of his son-in-laws told the Charleston Gazette-Mail in 2013 that he had come to believe that Sodder and his sons might have, in their haste to start the trucks, flooded the engines. But 2 of them? Both
2
of them? I don't know about that.
It's not hard
and
to
plus, he
turn on
drives them for a living.
Right. It's
so
not
I feel
hard
like he
to
would
turn
know
on
better.
a truck. If anything, it would come down to muscle memory if you're in a tense situation like that.
Right.
And you're not really thinking about it. Muscle memory would probably take over.
So that seems a little unlikely to me.
Yes.
Personally.
Same.
Some accounts have suggested the wrong number phone call to the Sodder house might have also somehow been connected to the fire and disappearance of the children. However, investigators later located the woman who made the call. She confirmed it had been a wrong number on her part.
Mm-hmm. She was just making sure they were home.
Maybe.
I'm very suspicious of this whole case.
It just gets crazier too.
Oh my god.
It's like, researching this thing just made me so mad because it's just like everything is just against this family for whatever reason. Well,
That's
I know the
horrible.
reason, but as spring approached, the Sodders, as they said they would, planted flowers in the soil bulldozed over the house.
Aww.
Jenny tended it carefully for the rest of her life.
Aww.
However, further developments in early 1946 reinforced the family's belief that the children they were memorializing might in fact be alive somewhere.
Yeah. Tell me.
Evidence emerged which supported their belief that the fire had not started in the electrical fault and was instead set deliberately. The driver of a bus that passed through Fayetteville late Christmas Eve said he had seen some people throwing, quote, balls of fire at the house. So remember the whole Jenny hearing the thing hitting the roof and then rolling down?
Yeah.
Me personally, I think that was like a Molotov or something.
Yeah.
Where they threw it, the bottle didn't shatter, and it rolled down.
So did they catch did he get any identification from them? Or couldn't remember what they looked like or anything?
Unfortunately not. A few months later, when the snow had melted, Sylvia found a small, hard, dark green rubber ball-like object in the brush nearby. George, recalling his wife's account of a loud thump on the roof before the fire, said it looked like a, quote, pineapple bomb.
A pineapple bomb.
It's a hand grenade or some other incendiary device, usually used in combat.
Oh.
So, people just coming out of the war and it being around that time. And then, Mussolini still being a thing at this point in time.
Yeah.
They probably know how to make these pineapple bombs. The family later claimed that, contrary to the fire marshal's conclusion, the fire had started on the roof, although by then there was no way to prove it.
Right, because they bulldozed it way too early before the investigation.
Yup, well.
Anyway, this frustrates people from the future who look back and are like, why did you do that?
Yeah, but I don't know how I would react in this situation.
I would bulldoze my house.
Well, your house ain't there no more.
But
and they're more worried about burying their possibly dead kids.
They don't know that they're dead.
Well, at the time, they thought they were.
Well, they're wrong.
Well. Other witnesses claimed to have seen the children themselves. One woman who had been watching the fire from the road said she had seen some of them peering out of a passing car while the house was burning.
She didn't say anything at all at the time.
At the time.
Hey,
no.
your kids are over here. That's it. That's all it takes.
Now hear this. Another woman at a rest stop between Fayetteville and Charleston said she had served them breakfast the next morning and noted the presence of a car with Florida license plates in the rest stop's parking lot as well.
Okay.
So...
Some lead?
Possibly. The Sodders hired a private investigator named C.C. Tinsley from the nearby town of Gawley Bridge to look into the case. Tinsley learned that the insurance salesman who had threatened them with a fire a year before over George's anti-Mussolini sentiments had been on the coroner's jury that ruled the fire an accident.
Why?
And told this to the Sodders. He also learned of rumors around Fayetteville that despite his reports to the Sodders that no remains had been found in the ashes, Morris had found a heart, which he later packed into a metal box and secretly burned.
What?
Right.
Why?
Right.
For what?
Who knows? My question is, how do you just randomly find a heart and you're like, all right, I'm going to put this in a box?
I'm just going to burn it.
Right.
This isn't important. It's fine. That's like the line of thinking with the firemen. Like, yeah, I found bones and organs, but I thought I wouldn't tell the family about it. Like, regardless of if you're trying to save somebody's feelings, it would be nice to know where your children are.
Yeah. So, Morris had apparently confessed this to a local minister who confirmed it to George. George and Tinsley went to Morris and confronted him with this news. Morris agreed to show the two where he had buried the metal box, and they dug it up. They took what they found inside the box to a local funeral director, who, after examining it, told them it was in reality fresh beef liver that had been exposed to the fire.
What?
That had never been exposed to the fire.
Just a liver. Okay, so this guy was just messing with them.
My thing is, how do you confuse a liver with a heart?
Because I think he planted it and was trying to like gain notoriety for finding an organ for their missing children. Because I'm
But
sure
he
this was
burned it,
probably a
though.
big case.
But he just took it and burned it and never told anybody. The
Yeah,
only
but
way people know is because he confessed it to a minister.
Right, but the liver inside that was found apparently wasn't touched by any fire.
Yeah, I don't know.
What a tool.
Who knows, man? Later, more rumors circulated around Fayetteville that Morris had afterwards admitted the box with the liver had indeed never come from the fire originally. He had supposedly placed it there in the hope that the Sodders would find it and be satisfied that the missing children had indeed died in the fire.
You just want to be relevant. That's all it is.
That's such a messed up thing to do, though.
I know.
Like, honestly, I don't see what drives people to do that.
They just want to be relevant.
Right. So now we're going to get to how George is dad of the century here. George
Because
did not.
he wasn't already.
Just wait. It gets better.
All right.
George did not wait for reports of sightings to come in. Sometimes he made them himself. After seeing a girl in a magazine picture of young ballet dancers in New York City who looked like one of his missing daughters, Betty, he drove all the way to the girls' school where his repeated demands to see the girl himself were refused.
Oh.
He drove from Fayetteville all the way to New York just to see if this was his daughter.
Yeah.
And he was refused.
That sucks.
Crazy.
I mean, that's fair. You got to protect the kid, but like at the same time, maybe you can connect him to the parents of, or the quote unquote parents of this kid to be
Right.
like, hey, this distraught father lost his child. Thinks that this is his child. You know?
Honestly,
Whatever.
man.
I mean, I get it.
He also tried to interest the FBI into investigating what he considered a kidnapping. Director J. Edgar Hoover personally responded to his letters. Although I'd like to be of service, he wrote, the matter related appears to be of local character and does not come within the investigative jurisdiction of this bureau.
Yes, it does.
If the local authorities requested the bureau's assistance, he added, he would of course direct agents to assist, but the Fayetteville police and fire departments declined to do so.
Because they're in on it. It's a conspiracy. The whole town.
This whole thing, man. This whole thing is just one big.
Yeah,
what is going on?
I'm angry.
Imagine me doing this research, man. So now we're going to go into August of 1949. George was able to persuade Oscar Hunter, a Washington, D.C. pathologist, to supervise a new search through the dirt at the house site. After a very thorough search, artifacts including a dictionary that had belonged to the children and some coins were found. Several small bone fragments were unearthed, determined to have been human vertebrae.
Okay.
The bone fragments were sent to Marshall T. Newman, a specialist at the Smithsonian Institute. They were confirmed to be lumbar vertebrae, all from the same person. Quote, since the transverse recesses are fused, the age of this individual at death should have been 16 or 17 years.
Oh, okay.
Newman's report said, quote, the top limit of age should be about 22 since the centra, which normally fuse at 23, are still unfused. Thus, given this age range, it was not very likely that these bones were from any of the 5 missing children, since the oldest, Maurice, had been 14 at the time.
Oh, okay.
Although the report allowed that vertebrae of a boy his age sometimes were advanced enough to appear to be at the lower end of the range.
Right.
So,
I mean, maybe.
the vertebrae they found were not in the same range as,
Right. Any of the children.
it
that
being
disappeared.
14, the young or the oldest.
Yeah.
So,
So then where did the...
could have been there from, previous residents who may have, died there or something.
Maybe.
Maybe.
Or something happened after the events and like somebody was buried there or something. I don't know.
It's possible.
Weird.
Newman added that the bones showed no sign of exposure to flame, though.
Right.
Further, he agreed that it was, quote, very strange that those bones were the only ones found, since a wood fire of such short duration should have left full skeletons of all of the children behind.
Yep.
The report concluded that the vertebrae had instead most likely come from the dirt that George had bulldozed over the site. Later, Tinsley supposedly confirmed that the bone fragments had come from a cemetery in nearby Mount Hope.
That's weird.
Yeah.
How'd they end up there?
So
I don't
I
understand.
feel like
anything in
either
this case.
I feel like people have it out for this family for their anti-Mussolini stuff,
Yeah.
and they're going to extreme lengths to try and
destroy their lives.
destroy their lives.
I agree. That's weird.
The Smithsonian returned the bone fragments to George in September of 1949. According to its records, their current location is unknown.
Yeah, I mean, what do you
So
do
even with
them?
modern technology, we wouldn't be able to see who it was.
Right.
So that's kind of the main thing. Is just I feel like if we knew where it was, we could do modern DNA testing on it.
Maybe.
And see maybe if it does belong to one of the children or if it's just some random piece of bone that just happened to be in dirt
Right.
from however long ago.
Weird.
The investigation and its findings attracted national attention, and the West Virginia legislature held 2 hearings on the case in 1950. Afterwards, however, Governor Oki L. Paxton and State Police Superintendent W.E. Burchett told the Sodders the case was, quote, hopeless and closed it at the state level.
Oh.
The FBI decided it had jurisdiction as a possible interstate kidnapping, but dropped the case after 2 years of following fruitless leads. With the end of official efforts to resolve the case, the Sodders did not give up hope. They had flyers printed up with pictures of the children offering a $5,000 reward, which they soon doubled, for information that would have settled the case for even one of them.
Yeah.
In 1952, they put up a billboard at the site of the house and another along U.S. Route 60 near Ansted with the same information. It would in time become a landmark for traffic through Fayetteville on U.S. Route 19, today State Route 16. The family's efforts soon brought another reported sighting of the children after the fire. Ida Crutchfield, a woman who ran a Charleston hotel, claimed to have seen the children approximately a week afterwards. Quote, I do not remember the exact date, she said in a statement. The children had come in around midnight with 2 men and 2 women, all of whom who appeared to her to be of, quote, Italian extraction.
Was the mafia around?
Yes.
During this time?
There was if I remember, I think they were called like the Sicily Mafia. And they were very into Mussolini.
Yep, that's what happened.
So when she attempted to speak with the children, quote, one of the men looked at me in a hostile manner. He turned around and began talking rapidly in Italian. Immediately, the whole party stopped talking to me. She recalled that they left the hotel early the next morning. Investigators today do not, however, consider her story credible, as she had only first seen photos of the children 2 years after the fire, 5 years before she came forward.
It's a potential lead,
It's a potential thing, but they decided it wasn't a credible source.
Right. I don't want to do my job.
George followed up leads in person, traveling to the areas from where tips had come. A woman from St. Louis, Missouri, claimed Martha was being held in a convent there. A bar patron in Texas claimed to have overheard 2 other people making incriminating statements about a fire that happened on Christmas Eve in West Virginia some years before. None of these proved significant.
Right.
So, like I said, dude, father of the century. Like, he was driving across the country on just possible lead that one of his children might be around.
Right. What else can you do, though?
Yeah. I don't know. That's just like, that's just an A1 dad right there. When George heard later that a relative of Jenny's in Florida had children that looked similar to his, the relative had to prove the children were his own before George was satisfied.
I'm glad he actually proved it to him, though.
Yeah.
Instead of, denying him, basically.
Yeah. So we're going to fast forward to 1967. George went to the Houston area to investigate another tip. A woman there had written to the family saying that Lewis had revealed his true identity to her one night after having too much to drink. She believed that he and Maurice were both living in Texas somewhere. However, George and his son-in-law, Grover Paxton, were unable to speak with her. Police there were able to help them find the 2 men she had indicated, but they denied being the missing sons. Paxton said years later that doubts about that denial lingered in George's mind for the rest of his life.
Right. So I wonder if they were kidnapped, they had some sort of threats made towards them or their family.
Possibly, in it being the mafia, considering that, the oldest was only 14 at the time,
right.
They could have very easily just,
brainwashed them.
Yeah.
That's sad.
So another letter that they received that year brought the Sodders what they believe was the most credible evidence that at least Lewis was still alive. One day, Jenny found in the mail a letter addressed to her, postmarked in Central City, Kentucky, with no return address.
Oh.
Inside was a picture of a young man of around 30 with features strongly resembling Lewis's, who would have been in his 30s if he had survived.
Oh, wow.
On the back was written, Lewis Sodder, I love brother Frankie, Lil Boys, A90132 or 35.
What does that mean?
No clue.
Okay, A901 and then 32 or 35 might be an age.
Maybe.
Weird. A901. Huh.
Yeah.
Was that their address, maybe?
I don't think so. That's not any address I've seen.
901. That's weird.
Yeah, it's a little cryptic. The family hired another private detective to go to Central City and look into the missive, but he never reported back to the Sodders, and they were unable to locate him afterwards.
Did he take their money? He took their money and ran.
The picture nonetheless gave them hope. They added it to the billboard, leaving Central City out of it and any other published information out of fear that Lewis might come to harm, and put an enlargement of it over their fireplace.
Oh.
George admitted to the Charleston Gazette-Mail late the next year that the lack of information had been, quote, like hitting a rock wall. We can't go any further,
right.
End quote. He nevertheless vowed to continue. Time is running out for us, he admitted in another interview around that time. But we only want to know. If they did die in the fire, we want to be convinced. Otherwise, we want to know what happened to them.
Right.
I can't imagine.
Yeah, going to your death, not knowing what happened to your children.
Yeah. And then like all this
life in torment.
All this stuff was like, who set you up? Are they dead? Are they not dead? What's with all these people,
right.
Kind of being against me the whole time and trying to find them? It's just, I couldn't imagine, man.
It's like a hell.
So unfortunately, in 1969, George Sodder died.
Yeah.
Jenny and her surviving children, except John, who never talked about the night of the fire except to say that the family should accept it and get on with their lives, continued to seek answers to their questions about the missing children's fate.
Yeah.
After George's death, Jenny stayed in the family home, putting up fencing around it and adding additional rooms. For the rest of her life, she wore black in mourning and tended the garden at the site of the former house.
That's so sad.
It's sad, man. After her death in 1989, the family finally took the weathered, worn billboard down with the 5 missing children's faces.
How long was it up?
They put it up in the 1949, I believe. So it's been up there for a while.
Decades, yeah.
The surviving Sodder children, joined by their own children, continue to publicize the case and investigate leads.
Oh.
They, along with older Fayetteville residents, have theorized that the Sicilian mafia was trying to extort money from George and the children may have been taken by someone who knew about the planned arson and said they would be safe if they left the house. They were possibly taken back to Italy. If the children had survived all those years and were aware that their parents and siblings had survived too, the family believes they may have avoided contact in order to keep them from harm.
Yeah.
As of 2015, Sylvia Sodder Paxton, the youngest in the family, is the only surviving Sodder sibling who was in the house on the night of the fire, which she says is her earliest memory. Quote, I was the last one of the kids to leave home, she recalled to the Gazette-Mail in 2013. She and her father often stayed up late talking about what might have happened. Quote, I experienced their grief for a long time. She believes that her siblings survived that night and quietly assists with efforts to find them and publicize the case. Her daughter said in 2006, quote, she promised my grandparents she wouldn't let the story die, that she would do everything she could.
That's so sad.
Yeah.
I believe that they're alive, or they lived a life,
I mean, all things considered, the most likely thing is that these kids were kidnapped of some sort.
Right. I mean, that's what I believe.
Yeah. Yeah. It was just one big thing. In the 21st century, these efforts have come to include online forums like websleuths.com, in addition to media coverage. The increase in the latter has led some who have examined the case to believe that the children did in fact die in 1945. George Bragg, a local author who wrote about the case in his 2012 book, West Virginia's Unsolved Murders, believes that John was telling the truth in his original account when he said he tried to physically awaken his siblings before fleeing the house. He allows that the conclusion may still not be correct. Logic tells you they probably did burn up in the fire, but you can't always go by logic.
Logic doesn't tell me that.
Right, but
you're wrong.
Stacey Horn, who did a segment on the case for National Public Radio around its 60th anniversary in 2005, also believes the children's death in the fire is the most plausible solution. In a contemporaneous post on her blog with materials she had to cut from her story for Time, she noted that the fire had continued to smolder all night after the house collapsed, and that 2 hours was not enough time to search the ash thoroughly. Even if it had been, the firefighters may not have known what to look for, which I feel like they would have. You're looking for
children,
bones.
Bodies. So, sorry, circling back, I forgot to ask a question. Did they hear like any screaming or anything?
Nope.
Yeah, they got took. Yeah, it's not a quiet death.
It is not a quiet death, but this whole thing is just really weird.
Yeah.
However, she said, there is enough genuine weirdness about this whole thing that if someday it is learned that the children did not die in the fire, I won't be shocked, is what she said.
Yeah.
After pretty much just saying they died in the fire.
Right.
That right there is pretty much the whole case of the Sodder children. The kids who went up in smoke is another name for it.
Is that what they call it?
That's a name for it.
Huh.
My personal opinion, what I believe happened is that the Sicilian mafia definitely took these kids
Don't come
because
for us.
he was talking ill about Mussolini.
Yeah. I mean, I believe that.
You know, Mussolini being a dictator at that time, you know, he definitely had his loyalists.
That's what logic tells me, sir.
So
Whoever your name was. Get out of here.
But right there, that'll be the end of the Sodder family case. I would like to know what you guys theorize about this, what you might think happened to the children.
It was the mafia.
It was the mafia. 100% it was the mafia, man. So I really hope you guys enjoyed this episode. So be sure to leave a like and subscribe if you're on YouTube. Go ahead and shoot us a follow on Spotify if you're on there. Go ahead and subscribe and leave a review on there for Apple Podcast. And you can always find more places to listen to us on our website at whatsleeppodcast.buzzsprout.com.
If you guys want to see any more news or any media that we might post, like pictures or videos or audio clips or anything like that, you can find us on Twitter at WhatSleepPod, on Instagram at WhatSleepPodcast. We have a subreddit called What Sleep Podcast, and on our Facebook page at What Sleep Podcast.
I hope you enjoyed this episode, and we will definitely catch you in the next one. Bye.